50 years ago, Chariots of the Gods. And what people always ask me, how have you come to this idea? I was educated in Switzerland, I'm a Swiss, and for 6 years I was in a boarding school led by Jesuits, Catholic priests, Jesuits. There we had to translate parts of the Bible from Greek to Latin and from Latin to German. Of course, I was a deep believer in God as a boy. I am still a deep believer in God. But as a young man, God, for me, had to have some qualities. For example, God makes no mistake. Or God does not need a vehicle in which to move around from point A to point B. God is all over. Or of course, God should be out of time, timeless. The real God would not make an experiment, and then he has to wait what the result is. He knows the result in advance. So all these I had in my head when I was a young man in this boarding school. Now, by translating the Bible, I learned that the God in the Bible does not have these qualities. The God in the Bible uses a vehicle in which to move around from point A to point B. I will come to this point later. The God in the Bible, he makes mistakes. For example, he creates Adam and Eve, and later he's not happy with it. He destroys them again, a great flood and all these things. So I simply had doubts in my own Catholic education, and I wanted to find out if other communities in antiquity have similar stories than we have. And that was the beginning of all this, of Chariots of the Gods and all the rest, as you know, in the meantime. Now, the study began in high school when I realized in the Second World War, the American Air Forces were fighting in the South Pacific against Japan. And there were a little island with the name of Tanna. The natives of Tanna had never seen an aircraft. At that time, the aircrafts were only propellant aircraft, not jets. So the Americans, they simply improvised an airstrip on the island, and then they landed with their propellant aircrafts. And the natives looked at the sky, and they believed that these machines must be beings from heaven, flying beings. They could not understand what it was. Now, the American soldiers were very friendly. They always make presents to the natives. They give them chewing gum or some old shoes or whatever. They make them presents. And the natives believe that these presents came from heaven. So in science, we call this cargo. The word cargo means all kind of objects which you can transport. So in science, we call this cargo cult, because 30 years after the World War, an American ex-soldier came back to this island of Tanna. And what he said, he could not believe it. The natives still have constructed some propellant aircrafts made out of wood and straw. They have no idea that there is an engine in there. They don't know what for the propellant is. They simply copy what they saw from outside. So since there, I studied so-called cargo cults. It's a worldwide phenomenon. Whenever a technological high society comes together with a technological lower society, the lower society does not understand the high technology. For them, it's something like magic. And they start to imitate it, to copy it. So it's always a non-understanding technology. I have a few examples here. You can't see much on this picture. This is a so-called stele in Tikal. Tikal is in Central America, belongs to the Maya culture. Now you see someone here. See, he has two elbows like this. He's standing there. It has function. The head is missing. There is nothing on top of it. And in the center, something comes down here. I have a closer picture. You see here, his hands, his elbows. Okay. And normally, the Maya people had no shoes. They were barefooted. And if they had some sort of shoes, it was a sort of sandal. What this has here, we don't know it. So I asked myself, is this cargo cult? Is this misunderstanding technology? The same here. This is in El Baúl. El Baúl is in Guatemala. I found this in the middle of the jungle, the middle of nowhere. You see again a man in this position here. But he has a helmet on. You see his face, his front, his eyes behind the helmet. What you see here is this white stuff is not what you believe. It's not the shit of bird. It's the rest of candles. When I came there, the natives were adoring this stele, and up there they had white candles, and the wax of the candles were falling down. So again, is this cargo cult? You see, I got no stroke. Again, he has this helmet. Behind his helmet, you see his face, his nose, his eyes. He has something on his back, like a tank. Misunderstanding technology. Why not? In archaeology, they tell us that the Maya had no wheel. They did not invent the wheel, but I found many wheels in the jungle from the Maya culture. This one is in Copan, this one too. Technology, have they seen something, copied something, even if they didn't use it, if they didn't know what it was for, what for? Again, in Copan, there are about 20 of these gigantic figures. There's a controversy going on. Are they priests or are they gods? Whatever they are, they all have on their chest, zeig's nächste Bild, here, a box on their chest. And with 10 fingers, they manipulate some controls. Of course, the Maya had no computers. That's ridiculous. But have they seen something among the gods which they could not understand? And have they copied it? Cargo cult, misunderstanding technology. And these are only a few examples. They must have had boxes on their chest too. The boxes are left, are missing. But you see still they were manipulating the boxes on their chest. Brings nächste. I love this one especially. Now this laser beamer is very lousy, you cannot see nothing. But here, you see his finger here. Now, you go here. The finger of his hand. It's as if he were using a jackhammer. So misunderstanding technology. The same thing happened in Egypt. Egypt is full of this misunderstanding technology. What is this? You find it in Egypt in every possible way. Very small on vases or very big on pillars. All kind of these drawings are. And in archaeology they are called a jet pillar. But what is a jet pillar? If you read the scientific literature, they make suggestions just crazy. One said, it's a sign of the god Ptah. Another one said, no, it's a piece of a crop. Others said, it's a symbol for eternity. Or it's a symbol for death. So we don't know what it is. It's just called jet pillar. Misunderstanding technology. And the best example of jet pillar is in this temple here. This temple is in Abydos. Abydos is on the Nile. The temple was constructed by Sethos I about 1400 BC. When you are a tourist in Egypt, you must go to Abydos because the temple is sensational. Inside, you still see the original cowlers, how they were thousands of years ago. And there you see again a jet pillar. In that case, the jet pillar is bigger than the persons. And it's the goddess Isis who makes a present to the pharaoh, Sethos I, with giving him a jet pillar. But what is a jet pillar? We have absolutely no idea. We simply swim. If you are in the temple of Abydos, you have to go behind the temple. The jet pillar which you saw were up there. Now behind the temple you find a hole in the ground. And then you see these stones. They remind somehow on Stonehenge. You see the precision of the quality of the stones? Now these blocks come from Aswan. Aswan is 400 kilometers from here. They were transported by the Nile. But you see the precision of the working. This is high technology. That means they had to transport 400 miles on the Nile, then they have to take it away from the ship, they have to prepare something like a crane to come, let them slowly down, these gigantic blocks. And what you see here, this is technology that they fit exactly together. The problem we have, every technology has something like an evolution. We slowly learn something. We learned some thousands of years ago that there are hard stones and soft stones. We learned that with hard stones we can cut or polish the soft stone. We learned slowly how to transport these stones, how to move it. But for this you need high technology. And this is older than the temple of Sethos. You clearly see, here is this old stuff. And then Sethos, 1300 AD, BC, started and constructed his temple over this old construction. So the evolution of technology is upside down. You know, first, the most primitive stones should be the small ones. We start to put together small stones. Then we learn later, because of technology, how to move big stones, large stones. But here it's all upside down. The oldest technology is the most perfect one. And later came only rubbish. Now this place is called Osirion. Why Osirion? Osiris was the first god in Egypt. He came from the star of Orion, the star belt of Orion. And Osiris was a nice fellow. He helped the people. He taught the people. The people loved Osiris. But he had a brother, his name was Set. And the people hated Set because Set was some sort of dictator. So Set killed his brother Osiris. And he smashed his body into different pieces. And the best part of the body, the head, should be buried here. That's why they call it Osirion. Of course, they never found any head here. Oh, this is just a sort of mythology. Some of the blocks, by the way, are granite. Some of them weighed 80 tons, one block. Just move this in Stone Age time. What sort of cranes do you have to put this in this precision together? We have no answer. Only questions. And all this is together with the temple of Sethos, but Sethos is much younger than this. This is the oldest part of it. No explanation. All these temples in Egypt are on the Nile. The next one too. This one is called Dendera. Dendera is relatively a young temple, but on the bottom of it, this young temple was constructed on a bottom which is thousands of years old. There were several temples before this temple here. Now they told us all the time in school that the old Egyptians believed that the sun goes up in the east, crosses over the Nile, and sinks down on the west. So the winged sun god. But here in Dendera we see the barks of the sun in the middle of the stars. Osiris in his flying ship, in heaven, in the stars. This is Dendera in the Nile, not too far from Abydos where we have been before, just on the other side of the Nile. And I said this temple was constructed on a very old construction. The construction dates back 3000 BC. And in this bottom, there are several subterranean rooms. They are secret rooms. Now one of these rooms is open for tourism. You see, the entry is so small, you can enter like a dog. Backwards, you can go there. Then you come into a very small room in the bottom, under the temple. It's just about 1 meter large. You see, one man has room enough. But the walls, right and left, are completely covered, again, with hieroglyphics and with pictures. And then we find the same story, the jet pillar. What is it, the jet pillar? In that case, it looks as if it would something like electricity. We have the jet pillar on one corner here. Then we have this. Could be like a bubble lamp. Could be glow. In archaeology, officially, they say that this represents the womb of the mother of Osiris. And this should be a sperm. It's all ridiculous because the old Egyptian had no microscope. They could not see a sperm. So maybe it's represent the technology again, something secret. Now, of course, I know the Egyptians had no electricity. There were no lights like this. But maybe one of the gods said to one of his followers, one of his priests, because the priest helped them. They give them food, they give them diamonds, they give them gold. So one of the gods said, come on, I learn you something so that you can impress the people. It's very easy. I show you how you can make something to glow. And the priest made this miracle. And the people believed it. Oh, he has a high power. Look, bring us next. This was found near Baghdad, outside of Baghdad. In the beginning, they believed it's just a sort of vase for flowers. Then we realized that inside are two different sorts of metal. There is copper and iron. Now you have copper and you put an iron stick in it. And on the bottom, we found the residues of acid, like acid from lemon or acid from wine. Now just do this today. Two different sorts of metal, iron and the copper, and add acid. Then you have an electric battery working off the galvanic principle. Of course, we tried if it worked. In Interlaken in Switzerland is a park which is open in summer only, in winter it's closed. It's called the Jungfrau Park. It's an event park. You see all these mysteries in wonderful pavilions. Bring was next. Okay. And there we made the experiment. Does it work? Yes, it does work. The lamp was glowing. Oh. Now come to another subject. Bring us next to Stonehenge. We are here in England, and everyone knows what that is, of course. Now, what you don't know, there are about 20 different theories about Stonehenge. And one of them says the different rings represent our solar system, the planets in our solar system, in the correct distance. You just see them. Imagine in the center you have the sun. Then the nearest planet around the sun is Mercury. The next one is Venus. Then follows Mars, the Earth, Mars. Between Mars and Jupiter is a big leak, it's the asteroid belt. And Jupiter is represented by the greatest stone block, the so-called heel stone. So the distances of the circle between one circle and the next one represent the distances of the planets in our solar system. But our ancestors, Stone Age people, could not have known this. They knew nothing about Mercury. Too small, too near to the sun. So must somebody have told them? And what even the British population doesn't know. Stonehenge is linked together to a gigantic line. Look. You know, in this country, what old ceremonies, the Salisbury Cathedral, today it's a cathedral. But in Stone Age time, it was a holy place made out of stone. And all this is linked together in a triangle. And all these places, you can continue a line, crossing over, and it continues over Europe. Now somebody told me, Eric, this is very simple. You take a map of Europe, and you take a compass, and you just draw a line. And the line will always, by coincidence, cross some of the villages. These villages, on each star which you see, under the star is an archaeological place. It's not coincidence. And each village, still today, has the same keyword. Look, Alès, Mont Alès, l'Alex, l'Alexandre, l'Alès, etc. ALE, always the same. It's not coincidence. Somebody must have told our Stone Age people, all right, you wish to make a temple in our honor, make it, but please look, make your construction exactly here. And another community, to our honor, a temple or something for us, okay, but please make it there. Why at the hell? I come back to this. French Brittany. French Brittany, since thousands and thousands of years, we have, in original, it was about 10,000 of these gigantic megalithic blocks. And all kinds of speculation have come forward. What is it? In the beginning, they believed these must be stone blocks for a tomb, but they found no tomb. Then some local farmer had the idea, maybe something valuable is inside the stone. So they came with big hammers and broke the stone. Of course, there was nothing inside. Then they came to mythological ideas. All these are Roman soldiers which have been transformed into stone. It's just mythology. Only nowadays, 12 years ago, when for the first time the whole region was photographed from a helicopter, and later the mathematicians realized it's all not coincidence. These stones are not just standing there. They have nothing to do with astronomy, with the beginning of spring or the end of the year. It's all high geometry. It's always the same distance, 2,860 meters, or exactly half of it. It turns out it's all Pythagorean triangles. But Pythagoras, the Greek mathematician, was roughly 400 BC. That's 5,000 BC. How can this? Why have these Stone Age people had no idea of high geometry? Of course, not of Pythagoras. Why at the hell do they come to the idea to make these stone blocks in a geometrical form with the same distances, the same angles all over? I come back to this again. There is a reason behind it. And this mystery continues in old Greece. The center of old Greece is Delphi. Delphi is the place where the god Apollo descended first. By the way, not by coincidence. His father was surrounding the earth in a flying machine. And then they saw some people down there living, and they wanted to make contact with the people. So he sent his son Apollo down there. Apollo was like a teacher, comparable to Osiris in Egypt. He taught the locals in mathematics, in astronomy. He also taught them how to construct houses on a hill so that they would not fall down when the rain comes, when it is all overflowed. Now, Delphi is a modern place. We call it the modern archaeology, the classical archaeology, starting roughly 600 BC until later after Christ. But Delphi is laid out on a Stone Age temple. The lower part here is Stone Age. The upper part is the classical temple of Apollo in Delphi. Now, all of these old Greek temples, they have been staying there in Stone Age time already. And later in classical times, they came and built upon the Stone Age their modern temples. Mach nu weiter. I was in Greece a few years ago and I had a speech at the Rotary Club. And later, a general of the Air Force came to me and asked me, Mr. von Däniken, do you know that all these old Greek temples, they are linked together in a geometrical pattern? I said, this is not possible because Greece has a lot of mountains. You cannot look over the hill, over the mountain. Or some parts are in the Mediterranean Sea, 200 kilometers away. So this is not possible that you can see it by eyes. And he said, I can prove you this. The next morning, I was at the Air Force place in Athens, and they showed me a map. And they showed me that all these places are linked together in the same distance with the same angels, but dating back to Stone Age. I said to this general, but in Greece you had brilliant mathematicians, Euclid, Pythagoras. They made all this. He said, no, that's much older than Euclid or Pythagoras, thousands of years before them. So again, we have the same situation. Why have the Stone Age people constructed temples, but on geometrical places? And you, ladies and gentlemen, you can very, very easy control this. All what you need is a map of Greece. And then you need a compass. And with the center of the compass, you just point to one archaeological place in Greece. And with the other part of the compass to a second one. And then you draw a circle. And the circle will always at least bring two other places together on the same ring, on the same circle. And you can play this game 26 times over Egypt. So something is completely wrong here. Now why? What for? I am sure the so-called extraterrestrials, they were here some thousands of years ago. We have a lot of references in the old literature. I'm really a specialist of it. And not only in the literature, we have it on place. Our forefathers, they copied the gods, they copied the technology. Later they make temples for the gods. In typical archaeology, they say, well, they make temple for the gods. The gods they worshipped in the nature, in the storm, in the wind, in the lightning and all this, which is not correct. I come to this later. But even it is not enough, the storm and the lightning and the wind, to construct gigantic temples. Somebody must have been so important to the people that for them they make the temples. And the gods order them, okay, make it there and there and there. Why? Before the so-called gods left the planet, they made a deposit. I call it a time capsule. Somewhere is something on which it is written, we were here at that and that time with that and that technology and that speed for that and that reason. We found that and that here on your planet. We found this primitive pre-man. We changed it, etc., etc. We will return then and then. Now just use your imagination. They left something, as I say, a time capsule. What could it be? A disk, some mathematic formulas, some writing, whatever they left. They must find a deposit which cannot be destroyed for thousands of years, because the message is addressed to the future generations of mankind, thousands of years later. So what do you do with your message? The ant will eat it. Well, the earthquake will destroy it. You put it in a temple, and later, 1,000 years later, some dictator destroys the temple because he has another religion, or some tsunami will destroy it. What are you doing? Where do you deposit your message for the far future? Soon as you have found a logical place for your deposit, how do you manage it that the future generations, thousands of years later, come and look for it? If you don't know that something exists, you never look for it, you never seek for it. You have to have the idea in your head. That's why they give the order, our forefathers, okay, make your temple there, and there, and there, and there. And so all of a sudden we have gigantic lines crossing over Europe, all with archaeological places. We have geometric, high geometry in French Brittany. The same thing in Greek. They knew thousands of years ago that thousands of years in the far future, the humans will be able to fly. They will measure their lands, their countries, their limits. They will photograph it. And sooner or later they will realize something is wrong here. All these lines, Greek in geometry, Pythagorean triangles with 10,000 of stones in French Brittany, something is wrong. And you can prove it by photographs, by measuring it. Now the people of the future start to ask questions. Have we maybe had a high civilization long before? Are this the remainder of? Or, because of the old literature where they write about the gods, have we maybe been visited by beings from outer space? Soon as humanity of the future come to these questions, have we maybe been visited by beings from outer space? They will ask, well, where is the proof? That's the situation where we are. Where is the proof? Now we have the question. But we only have the question because of these lines and these geometrical messages. Without these geometrical messages, we would never come to the question. That's why they did it. They knew exactly what they are doing. Now it's time for us, for our generation, to look for what I call a time capsule. It could be all over this planet, at some logical, mathematical place. But it could also be in an orbit around our planet. Maybe just a little football, a satellite is surrounding our planet. Since 20 or a little more years, we humans are sending satellites, the Americans and the British and the Russians, etc. Thousands of satellites and debris are around our planet. And we know exactly where they are. We know the position of every satellite. We have to know it because when you shot up a new satellite, it should not crash together with an old one. So we know exactly the orbit of thousands of these satellites. And since we have measured our near space, we know that there are 3 objects up there which no nation has ever sent up to space. They were there before we started our satellites. Now in science, you always look for the next plausible, logical answer before you come to some speculation. So the next plausible answer was, it must be the debris, the rest of some exploded meteorite. That's the logical answer. But in the meantime, we have the new question, because the situation has changed. In the meantime, we can ask, because of the geometrical patterns on Earth, what is the message of the gods? Is it maybe up there? Because this is a logical place. You know, up there in an orbit around the Earth, there is no storm, there is no wind, there are no earthquakes, there is no tsunami, there are no rust, and only the generation who is able to fly in space is able to collect the message. Now maybe it's time that we look closer to these three objects which are surrounding our planet since a long time, which we think they are just rests of a meteorite. Maybe they are not. I always ask my question, when was all this? Thousands of years, 5,000 years ago, and we have a few indication when it was. This is Malta, a little island in the Mediterranean Sea. There are wonderful temples. They go back at least 7,000 years in the past. And on Malta you find all these lines in the ground. The locals call it cart ruts. No one knows what it is. It's 20 theories. We have no answer what it was. And at some places in Malta, there are 3 places, you see that these cart ruts, they sink into the water of the Mediterranean Sea. Even by low tide, they have been measured 18 meters underwater. Now, our Stone Age people did not make any constructions underwater. So it must have been before the water of the Mediterranean Sea was rising up what we have today, the level of today. But the same situation has elsewhere. This is again French Brittany, where all these stone lines are. We are in a place called Gabrini. The little island you see here is called Gabrini. Now you see these stones, these stones going slowly, slowly down into the water. Now this is low tide, you see it at the moment. Here, 12 meters underwater. You can see the rest here. We have ruins. Before, in Malta, we were in the Mediterranean Sea. Now we are in the Atlantic Sea. The same question as before. It must have been before the water was rising up to our today's level. What about Pacific? The same situation. South of Japan is a place called Yonaguni. There are definitely ruins underwater, artificially made. It's not natural stuff. We have been there, we measured it, we have sent the divers down there. So, Mediterranean Sea, the level of the seawater. Atlantic Ocean. This is Pacific. When was it? That's a question which the geologists should answer to us. When was the last time that all these glaciers were melting so that the water was coming higher, higher, higher? 10,000 years ago, 12,000 years ago? But we can prove definitely there was a civilization before we find their traces under the water. So what can we do? What conclusions? From the scientists, in that case from the geologians, I never received a firm answer. Speculation. And we have another problem. We know today we have this problem with, was is Umwelt? Well, my English is bad. Yeah, but now the nature, we know that it's becoming hotter and hotter, and we say, okay, it's our fault because we have a lot of debris and mesh. I'm sure I want to have a clear planet. I want to have that we are proper and so. But we never asked the question, what happened 10,000 years ago? For what reason at that time the glaciers were melting? Then they were melting, otherwise we would not have ruins underwater. This question never comes to the public. Who was in charge then at that time? If in our time we are in charge, so what happened? It's a never-ending story. Now, if we would be in Egypt and we would stand before the Great Pyramid, the pyramid is always north-south and east-west. Exactly north-south and east-west. But not the same thing in Central America. This is Central America. And the pyramid is not laid out north, east, or southwest. You see the north-south line crosses the pyramid. The place is called Chichen Itza. It's in Mexico. And the pyramid is composed of 8 different terraces. And the pyramid is constructed in a way that every year, still today, on March 21st, you go down there are thousands and thousands of people in the early morning on March 21st. Then you see the sun rises up. And while the sun rises up here, the sun produces directly on the staircase here a band of light and shadow. Light and shadow. Men keine Animation, oder? Men keine Animation für den Bild. As higher as the sun goes, the light and shadow flows down. Exactly on the stairway, it shows God Kukulkan descended to the humans. That's on March 21st, every year, still today. And it only happens because of the astronomical orientation of the pyramid. If the pyramid would have not directly the way of the heavy control, this effect would never happen. You would never see it. And it also only happened because of the 8 steps. Without it, you don't have this effect. So on March 21st, every year, you see God Kukulkan in form of light and shadow coming down the steps. And on September 21st, you see it on the opposite side. This time when the sun goes down, then you see slowly the shadow, light and shadow climbing up the staircases. It's a demonstration. God Kukulkan was here among the humans. He taught us, he helped us, and then he disappeared, but with the promise to return in a faraway future. And this promise of return of the gods was practiced in every culture of the past and is practiced still today in our religion. Roughly 400 years ago, Francisco Pizarro, he was the Spanish guy who conquered South America, especially Peru. He came there, and the natives believed in the beginning that the Spanish guy is a god, the long-awaited God. They all fell down on their knees. Of course, he was just a human. Later, they understood it, but in the beginning, the same thing with in Central America, Moctezuma. The Spanish guy came to Moctezuma. Moctezuma was the ruler of the Aztec. Even the ruler believed that the Spanish man was a god. Finally returned. The same thing far away, for example, in the Pacific. The British explorer, Sir Cook, went to Hawaii. And the natives of Hawaii believed he's the long-awaited God. They all fell down on their knees. So I want simply to make clear, this expectation of the returning of somebody is not an invention of Christianity. It existed long, long before. And what do we have today? Again, I'm raised up as a Catholic. We Christians, we believe that Jesus will return one day. But the Muslim society, they are absolutely sure that their Mahdi will return one day. We know every Buddhist believes that Buddha will return. Of course, the Jewish community believe, and this since over 5,000 years, that their Messiah will return. Now, to be honest, not every religion can be right. Some of them must be wrong. I'm afraid they are all wrong. There's neither Jesus, nor Buddha, nor Messiah, nor Mahdi who returns. Simply the extraterrestrials. They promised it before they left. And at the moment they are back, we are under observation. That's another story. It has to do with the UFO thing. We are under observation. Now, here in Central America, they demonstrated how the god Kukulkan has come down. The Maya calendar is a very complicated structure, but the holy figure in the Maya calendar was the figure 52. They believed every 52 years, or multiple forms of 52, so 52, 104, 208, etc. The gods will return, and they represent this still today. Go to Mexico. This was made before the Pyramid of Teotihuacan. You also find it in Mexico City, in the center of the city, before the Museum of Antropologia. There you see a big pillar. Then 4 natives, 4 Indians come with their wonderful colored dress, and they climb up this pillar. Each one has a rope. He put this rope on his feet. Being up there, finally, each of the 4 fell down from the pillar, like today's jumbie. But the length of the rope And the length of the pillar is calculated in a way that every one of these 4 circles around the pillar only 13 times. In their mythology, it was 4 gods who first arrived to the planet. And 4 gods surrounded our planet. 4 times 13 makes 52. They represent the descending of the gods to the planet. They touch it first with their hands. Sometimes I'm sitting there with tourists and I speak 4 languages. Then I hear the tourist guides telling the tourists that this is eine Mutprobe. This is a courage probe. I said, God, this is all garbage. What I tell to courage has nothing to do with courage probe. They simply represent the returning of the gods in the figure 52. 4 times 13 makes 52. Yes, there are a lot of indications here, not only in the holy books, but also in the temples. When I was a student and I had my doubts in religion, and I asked my professors in theology, and I told them I have doubts that my God does not need a vehicle in which to move from point A to point B, etc. And some of the professors, all through they were theologians, they were very open. They said, okay, Erich, go to the library of the university. The library of the university was connected directly to the college in which I was studying, and ask for a book of Enoch. So I asked for a book of Enoch, and I read Enoch. I was about 18 years old, and my eyes were completely open. What is he telling here? Who is Enoch, by the way? He was the 7th patriarch before the great flood. That means long time ago. Enoch is mentioned in the Bible as one of the prophets. But in the Bible, you read only 2 phrases about Enoch. You learn Enoch was the first human who left our planet in a fiery chariot. Much later came the prophet Elijah. Much later than Jesus and all these stories. Enoch was the first one before the great flood who left our planet in a fiery chariot. So in the Bible, you read 2 phrases about Enoch. So how do we know about a book of Enoch? Some 170 years ago, a British explorer came to Ethiopia, and he was seeking for God, for a true God, and he went into a convent. He finally stood in the convent for more than 35 years. He became a monk of this convent. And in the library of this convent, he found a book written in Ethiopian language, the Book of Enoch. He knew the name Enoch from the Bible. He knew Enoch was the first man who left our planet, but a book of Enoch? So he started to read the book of Enoch, and he was absolutely fascinated because Enoch writes in the first person, in the I form. I did, I saw, I was there, not in the second or third person. He did, he was there, etc., in the I form. Then, about in the 19th century, 1900, the book of Enoch was finally translated from old Ethiopian language into English, and later from English into German. Now you cannot go to a library just to ask, give me a book of Enoch. The book of Enoch is part of apocryphic texts. In German language, it reads like this: the Apokryphen des Alten Testamentes, the apocryph texts of the Old Testament. There are many volumes of them. This is a big literature. In this second volume here, you find 128 pages of Enoch. Now I said Enoch speaks in the first person. He tells the story. He was young. He even says how old he was. He was 12 years old. It was evening, and the whole village wanted to go to sleep. And then they hear the noise somewhere in the darkness of the sky. And they saw a light coming down from the sky. They were all afraid and ran away, except Enoch, the 12-year-old boy. He simply stood there. Then 2 strangers in glittering robes, in glittering clothes, came close to Enoch. And now Enoch became afraid too, and he fell on the ground too. He writes in his book, I smelled the humidity of the earth, of the acre. Of a sudden, one of these 2 took Enoch, puts him on his shoulder, and puts him on his feet, and said to the young man, don't be afraid, human. Don't be afraid. We won't hurt you. Now here the critics and the skeptics always come, how do you believe that these two strangers are extraterrestrial? Why should these extraterrestrials speak the language of Enoch? Thousands of years ago, they were here. They observed some groups of mankind like today's ethnologists would do. Today's ethnologists, they come up to the upper Amazon River or to the Nile, and they come together with cultures, and all these cultures have complete different languages. Not one of these cultures on the upper Amazon River would speak German or Italian or English or French or Spanish. Sometimes these languages are incredible, but it was never a problem for the ethnologists to learn the language of the locale. It takes a few months, and then you know it. Language was never a problem. My extraterrestrials, some thousands of years ago, they behaved themselves like today's ethnologists would do. They observed a few groups. They were in contact with some of them, and they learned their language. So now in the case of Enoch, one of the strangers says to Enoch, "Don't be afraid, human. Don't be afraid. We won't hurt you." For me, it's not a mystery. Of course they learned the language. They have learned to speak in their way. So one of the two says to Enoch, "If you wish, young man, human, we will take you up to the sky and we will teach you." The 12-year-old Enoch, he believes them. He says, yes, I will come with you. So they go. Now Enoch has no word of technology. He has never heard a word of spaceship, no idea. His words are all from Stone Age. He describes how they brought him up. He said, "We flew to heaven like with an eagle." Then he sees the round earth beneath him. He describes that the gigantic ocean has just become a small water. Then they are over in orbit of our planet. He has no water spaceship. He sees some object very big and glittering. He compares them with crystals. And he says, "I wish to fall down to the planet Earth." If someone, Stone Age time, wishes to fall down on the planet Earth, he is not on the planet Earth. Then he comes into a gigantic thing. For me, it was a spaceship which was surrounding our planet Earth. And when you have a spaceship, a mother spaceship, the spaceship itself will always turn around its own axis. By doing so, you create inside the spaceship an artificial gravity. That means you have bottom under your feet. So, but Enoch could not have known this. He's up there and he says, "The object on which we stood always turned around its own axis. Of a sudden, I saw the planet Earth up and the stars down." He could not understand what was going on, but the description was perfect. He, by the way, say, the two who brought him up there were two beings which I never saw on Earth. They did not ride like humans. Before they go up in a space shuttle, one of the strangers says to the 12-year-old boy, "You humans, you stink. You stink terribly." So he asked him to put all his clothes off. He had to put everything off. The boy is completely naked. Now they give him a cream, and they order him, he put that cream all over his body. In my eyes, they simply disinfected him. So Enoch does so, and he smells on his skin. And he said, it smelled like ambrosia and nectar, so something sweet. Then one of the two gives Enoch one of these glittering suits, the same one as they have. Enoch put it on, and then he looked at himself and said, "Hey, I looked like one of them." So Enoch comes up to the mother spaceship. He describes he was in a sort of garden, whatever, flowers and vegetables, which he had never seen before. He describes that he comes in a big round room, and in the center of the room there was a throne, and on the throne there was the highest sitting. Now, when these three people, two extraterrestrials and Enoch, come into this round room, the highest who is sitting on the throne stands up, walks a few steps toward Enoch, and shakes his hand. Now, the translation of Enoch from Ethiopia, as I said, is more than 100 years old. And at that time, our brilliant professors, our brilliant translators had no idea of extraterrestrials, no idea of technology of spaceship. They believed all this text of Enoch has to do with God, with religion. So they translated it all in a religious way. If you read Enoch, you will not find the story the same way as I told it you. If you read Enoch, you will find that 2 angels descended from the heaven. The 2 angels took Enoch and they was heißt gesalbt, das wissen wir nicht. They put him on the cream like a priest. Then he receives the priest's clothes. Then they go up to heaven. It was not heaven, it was simply space. Then they came in a gigantic spaceship. In the religion translation, say, now he's in heaven, he's in the Garden of Eden. It's all nothing, it's all misunderstanding. Not by conspiracy. Simply we had no word, no meaning at that time, 100 years ago. Then Enoch comes in the round room with the throne where the highest is sitting. In the religious translation, they say, now Enoch stands before the throne of the Almighty God. I am a deep believer in God. I am one of these figures who still pray every day. But my God would never have stand up, walked a few steps toward Enoch, shake his hands and say, welcome to heaven. Forget it, it was not God. It was all extraterrestrials. Enoch is up there and he stays there for years. Enoch learns the language of the extraterrestrials. Soon as he knows the language, they dictate him books. One of them, astronomer, says to Enoch, human, look out this small window. Do you see this little light out there? You humans call the light moon, but the moon has no light by itself. The moon receives his light from the sun. And he explains, Enoch, the different phases of the moon. Why is the moon sometimes full and then is empty and half empty? The extraterrestrial says to Enoch, do you see this bright shining light here? You humans, you call it sun. Do you see all the little lights up there in the sky? You humans call it stars. But these little lights are all suns like this, your light here. And he explains him that our sun is surrounded by planets and that we live on the 3rd planet. He explains him that our planet is surrounding the sun in 365 days plus what? We have leap years every 4 years. At Enoch, it's more precise, they have leap hours. So this is astronomy. This is scientific knowledge. That's why I can do nothing with the critics who tell me, Erich, that has all natural explanations. They adored the storm. They adored the wind. They saw the lightning coming down from the sky. They heard the thundering. They were afraid. So, of course, they created natural religion. Of course, there were natural religion, no doubt, in Stone Age time. But the explanation is not enough. The storm, the lightning, the earthquake does not explain you the moon phases with the sun or the calendar. There was a scientific instruction, and that's the difference between the natural explanation. And now I'm only talking about Enoch. There are many others in old Indian texts. Arjuna is one who was also up there, who learned the language, who received messages, scientific messages, calendar messages. All our historians who have been writing 1,900, 2,000, 2,300 years ago, like Herodotus, Theodore, Strabon, Plutarch, all these people speak about the gods. It was the gods who teach the human in every belonging, including in language, including in writing. It was not our invention. Now, of course, I know we have evolution. We are the product of the, if I say it in a non-scientific way, we are the product of a primitive tribe, which unscientific called the apes. We have the skeletons and the bones, but that's not enough. They have always mixed something, and we can prove this. It's not just I'm inventing this. Look, some roughly 65 years ago, on the Dead Sea, they found different Dead Sea scrolls. One Dead Sea scroll has the name Lamech scroll. Who is Lamech? You read in the Dead Sea Scroll that Lamech was a shepherd. Obviously, he was a rich shepherd. He had hundreds and hundreds of animals. And they were always traveling in the region so where there was something green to feed for the animals. After some months, Lamech came back to his home tents. And his wife, her name was Batenosh, had just given birth to a child. Now Lamech says to his wife, this can't be my boy, because I was away too many months. You know, with the 9 months of pregnancy, it doesn't work. And this boy looks completely different. But Enoch, his wife, swears him, nobody touched me. Lamech should accept this child, this boy, as his own, should grow him up as his own and give him the name of Noah. Because the guardians of the sky have decided to destroy mankind, and Noah is a survivor of the new generations of the humans for this planet. Now we all are descendants of Noah. We all have extraterrestrial genes in us, which does not contradict evolution. Of course, we are the product of evolution, but not only. There was only a mixture. Compared it with the tree. For example, we have an apple tree, and we know this apple tree has an evolution on this planet. Our botanics can go back for thousands or millions of years and find out what was the original root of the apple tree. But then the humans came, and by grafting, we changed the apple. By grafting, we don't even have to know something about genetics, about DNA. And we did it. So the apple tree has a normal evolution, yes, like we have. But not only. We were never a closed system. So Enoch is up there, and he learns all this. He learns in astronomy. He learns everything. Soon, Enoch knows the name of the extraterrestrial. And he gives the name, Enoch chapter 8. And these are the names of their leaders. The name of the first is Jachin, etc. Ladies and gentlemen, I know the names of the extraterrestrials. They did exist. They were here. Then Enoch realizes that these extraterrestrials, he calls it, by the way, never God. In the old book of Enoch, the word God never appears. He calls them the guardians of the sky. In modern translations of the book of Enoch, I always read the word God. It's not in the original. It's not true. Guardians of the sky. They teach him. They dictate him different books in astronomy, in geometry, etc. And Enoch realizes that these extraterrestrials, they have fights among each others. Some of them wanted to go down to Earth to steal our metal, our raw material, our golds and our diamonds. Another group was against it. Some of them want to go down to Earth to have sex with humans. And this was forbidden. It was not allowed by the highest. The highest is the commander of the spaceship. That crew had sex with humans. So we had a real mutiny on space, in a spaceship. Enoch describes this mutiny. Look like this. But when the sons of heaven saw that the daughters of men were fair, they admired them and desired to mate with them. And they said to each other, we will take them as wives. Altogether, they were 200, which descended upon Mount Hermon in the days of Jared. Jared is the father of Enoch. So the translations of all these old texts were made in a wrong way. Not because they didn't want to tell us the truth. Not because of some sort of conspiracy. Not. They had no other possibility. The translators, the professors in theology were brilliant people. They did their best, but they could not understand something of space travel. They made it all from their point of view at that time. The same thing with Enoch. Now, Enoch is hard to control for you. I mean, to find the book of Enoch, to find apocryphic texts. That's why I give you a last example, which you can really control, because everyone has a Bible at home. Just go to the Bible and look at the end of the Old Testament. There you find a prophet with the name of Ezekiel. I tell you the story now of Ezekiel, and while I'm beginning, I show you 5 pictures out of an old Bible, simply to give you an impression what our forefathers had in mind when they read Ezekiel some 150 years ago. And then I explain you how we came to the modern explanation. What was the reason behind it, how we did it. And finally, I show you a computer animation, which is absolutely sensational. Show the first picture here. Ezekiel, like Enoch, is one of the prophets in the Old Testament who speaks in the first person. So an eyewitness story. At his time, roughly 600 BC, he was, by profession, he was a high priest in the temple of Jerusalem. And at that time, Jerusalem was captured by the Babylonians. And the high society of the Jewish community and a high priest belongs to the high society, were captured, and they had to work as slaves for the Babylonians. So Ezekiel starts his book. He says, I was captured by the Babylonians on the river of Chebar. We all were working, and then the heavens were opened. The workers see, they hear a noise in the sky, and they see an object coming down. The noise becomes louder and louder. Soon as this object comes to the group of humans, sand is glowing up. And they all are afraid, including Enoch, including Ezekiel. He, of course, believes that he has to do something with God, with the Almighty God. Ezekiel, like all of them, fell to the ground. Then finally, the noise disappears, and Ezekiel, as a high priest, stands up. As the first one, he wants to honor the Almighty God. And then he realizes this is not God. Before him stays an object, a big thing. He calls it the splendorness of the highest. So this whole thing, all together, is the splendorness of the highest. Again, translations. I have translated Ezekiel also from one language to the other. And in our modern Bibles, English Bible, German Bible, we read, it was the splendorness of God, which is not true. In the original of Ezekiel, they never use the word God. They speak about the highest. So the whole thing is the splendorness of the highest. And on top of it, Ezekiel sees something like a throne. And on the throne, somebody is sitting like a human in glittering clothes. Then he looks down on this object and he sees some living creatures. And the living creatures had wings, and the wings moved. A terrible noise appeared. I said he compares the noise with the thundering of a waterfall. And he describes in every detail the wings. Finally, he sees the wheel, and now he's completely confused. In Ezekiel's time, wheels do exist. The wheels go forward and the wheels go backward. But the wheel he sees here on the splendors of the highest do not only go forward and backward, they go right and left at the same time without making a steering movement. You see, when you are sitting on your car, you have the steering wheel in your hands because you want to go in a curve. Now the front wheels are turning, but not with Ezekiel. The wheels are never turning. The wheels go backward, forward, right, and left without any movement. This confuses him so that he describes this wheel 4 times. Then he continues, he sees the legs. The legs were straight, they were sparkling like metal. He compares it, etc., etc. I can go back into every detail of Ezekiel. You have to read Ezekiel by yourself. Roughly 30 years ago, 20 years after Chariots of the Gods, I had a secret speech in NASA in Huntsville in the United States. All the rocket builders were there. Secret because we approved both sides. We said we will not go to public. NASA did not say that they invited Erich von Däniken, and I did not go to a journalist and say, hey, proud enough, I had a secret speak at NASA. I had the speech there. I showed some of my indication, including Ezekiel. And after my speech, we had a wonderful dinner in a hotel. The chief of the construction of Nazca at that time, a man with the name Joseph Blumrich, came to me and said, Erich, that was very interesting, your speech, but in the Bible, you were talking about the prophet in the Bible. What was his name? Ezekiel. I never heard about Ezekiel. Who is that fellow? I explained him who Ezekiel was, a high priest, etc. He said, but this is all nonsense. You know, in the Bible, we have stories, they are visions. There are dreams, they are illusions, but definitely nothing technical. You made out technique of the Bible. That's garbage. But anyhow, he was very friendly. He said he never read the Bible, and he never read Ezekiel. But now, because of my speech, he wants to read about this Ezekiel. And that's what he did. The next few months, he was reading Ezekiel, and he became astonished all the time. Every day, hey, what this man describes here, that's exactly what we have on our desk. They were on the construction of the Saturn V. That's exactly what we have here. Ezekiel describes something which we have already. We use it probably on Mars. So he took Ezekiel serious, word by word, and a small group of NASA scientists came and joined him. And these NASA people, they simply wanted to know, what does Ezekiel mean with the splendorness of the highest? What was the splendorness of the highest? They reconstructed it, word by word, and this is the result. Now, this is not a spaceship with which you could travel from star to star. This is not the mother spaceship. We would call this today a space shuttle. Or the old Indians would call it a vimana. Or the old Egyptians would call it the winged sun disk. It's just a shuttle which from the planet Earth goes to the mother spaceship in an orbit. So Ezekiel describes the whole thing as the splendorness of the highest. Up there he sees something glittering, and in there is something like a throne. It was simply the seat of the pilot. And there the pilot was sitting. Ezekiel describes somebody was sitting there in glittering clothes. It was the pilot. Then he describes four living beings with their wings. But what are four living beings here? In a far future, a generation, we will understand that this is not God, what Ezekiel describes. We will compare it with other texts in old Hindu, with the Vedic text. We find similarities worldwide in the mythology. Hey, this is technology, the building. The machine was not God. God is not using a machine in which a vehicle in which to move around. We will understand this is technology. And because of the text, and the text survived, we come up and ask question. Hey, what happened at that time? Was Ezekiel in contact with extraterrestrials? Yes, because of the text and the comparison with others. So, have these extraterrestrials not left a message? Will they return? Do we have to be afraid of them? Will they kill us? They will never kill us. We are their offsprings. If extraterrestrials would have loved or liked to kill us, they could have done it since thousands of years. That's not the purpose. The purpose of humanity is we should become intelligent. We all are intelligent, and intelligence means you are all curious. We have a beast in our brain, which is called curiosity. Because of curiosity, you will always continue to develop new machines, new engines. Imagine we humans would know everything, just everything. Our doctors in medicine would have found out how our brain functions completely. Our geologians have made a hole throughout the earth, the inner earth. We know everything, just everything. What is next? We see little lights up there in the night. And because we are curious, we ask us, what is this? We have no alternative. Sooner or later, we go out there to find it out. They brought intelligence to us. The purpose of our human life is to develop again technology, to go out again, to spread out intelligence in the whole universe. It's a system of multiplying. That's why we are here. And we will find this proof. This is on the planet Earth in the Sahara Desert in Mauritania. It was filmed for the first time by American astronauts from a space shuttle. We didn't know before. In the middle of the desert, which is this place here, this big circle here, it's called the Eye of Africa. Now, I return to Mars. Go to Mars. We have this ring on Mars. It has nothing to do on Mars. So simply we have to ask our question, what was on Mars? Some thousands of years ago. We were not there. So it must have been somewhere else. Now between Mars and Jupiter is the so-called asteroid belt. Asteroid belt is at 100,000 of broken stones. Some of them are small like footballs. Other of them are very big. The biggest asteroid is called Ceres. Ceres has a diameter of 790 kilometers in diameter. Now NASA, the NASA space probe with the name of Dawn, has surrounded Ceres, have made wonderful photographs from Ceres. And there we have another object which we cannot understand. There are bright shining spots, white. Now we always look for the next natural possible explanation in science. We ask, what is it, chowder? Is it shark? What is it? We have no explanation. We just speculate. Then the space probe filmed a mountain in the middle of nowhere. It's just a mountain. And the mountain has a sort of scratches, white and black and white. You will just see it. Now, if a spaceship is for hundreds of years on the way, the spaceship has to refuel something. We don't know what, raw material, is it uranium, whatever. And what you have to refuel, you never steal on the planet which is inhabited. You know, in the solar system, you have enough of other space bodies where you can take the raw material. Maybe somebody took raw material on this mountain, and we find the traces today. The one thing which is sure, we humans, we were never there. If we were not there, if it was not us, who was it? So sooner or later, all these who are against the hypothesis of extraterrestrial visits, they will lose anyhow. Because we go out there and we find it automatically. There are enough traces left on earth in these holy writings. Ezekiel or Enoch are just two examples. Traces in stones, triangles, holy geometry in ancient Greek. We have the traces and they do not fit to Stone Age. There must have been an influence. And now because of our today's technology, we find the traces out of our own planet. So sooner or later, we have to learn it. Until today, what I do and what some of my colleagues do is still ridiculed. So many critics, they think this is all nonsense. By the way, I love to fight and to discuss with skeptics and critics. They lose anyhow. It doesn't matter. So, but on the long term, the situation will come out, yes, we were visited by beings from outer space and they have promised to return. They are back here again. We don't have to be afraid of them. They never want to kill us. Just at the moment, if these extraterrestrials would show up at the moment, just here in Manchester United, we have a big football stadium. Let's imagine their TV cameras are already here. Now an extraterrestrial ship like Ezekiel come, make a landing over the football stadium. Fantastic. But the result would be a catastrophe on this planet. We have hundreds of religions on this planet. And the religions, they all have goodwill. They are not bad guys, but they believe what they say. Now a man like the Pope, which I respect, he would come before the microphone and say, this is evil. This is the devil. So we would be against them. The society is not prepared for this. And that is why I do my job. It's not the question of believe in Erich von Däniken or not. I hate it to think that some idiots come out and make a kind of religion of my sort of thinking. Had nothing to do with religion. It's just a question, know it. Look at all these indications which we have. They are here from another angle. And this will create a new image of our knowledge. And this image is the future of mankind. So I try to change with all my colleagues together the spirit of time. In German is a wonderful word for it. Call it der Zeitgeist, the spirit of time. So that's what we do. Slowly look at these mysteries from the past with modern eyes, and you come to another possible answer, and this will change our future. Unfortunately, I have to run to the airport. I have a flight somewhere. I would love to stay here and to sign some thousands of books. I have done it before, but at the moment I have no time for nothing, not even for a photograph. It was a pleasure to be again here in Manchester. It was a pleasure for me and a great honor to be invited and to have this speak here. And of course, I'm very grateful that you all were here and listening so quietly to this controversial figure. I wish to say what is my legacy. And there we have to start at the beginning. Everything always starts at the beginning. What is the beginning? If we begin with the universe, the scientific community tells us it all started with the Big Bang. What is this Big Bang? What initiated the Big Bang? We have no answer. Nothing comes from nothing. So the starting of the Big Bang is down through unscientific. And if we follow religion or philosophy, they tell us in the beginning was God.
wonderful. But what created God? Where did God come from? Who or what is God? So we really have no answer. We have no final answer, neither in philosophy, in religion, or in science. So what can we do? Well, we have to start with the Bible, with the Jewish tradition, with the Christian, including the Muslim tradition. In the beginning, we have God. What is God? Whatever God is, God had to have a few qualities. For example, God for sure would never be a liar. God would never tell lies. God is out of time. The real God doesn't need to make experiences and then he has to wait the result. What's the end of the experience? A timeless God knows the end from the beginning. And of course, another quality of God, God is omnipresent. He is all over. That means God would never need a vehicle to move from point A to point B. God is all over. So these are a few qualities which God should have, whatever God is. According to the Bible again, God created the universe, he created the earth, and as crown of creation, he created us, humans, starting with Adam and Eve. And according to the Bible, God saw it was good. These two first people, Adam and Eve, they were set into a wonderful garden called the paradise. And there, God told Adam and Eve, you may do everything you wish. Feel free, except one thing you are never allowed to do. In the Bible, they speak about the apple. Of course, the apple is not the true. It was just something which they were forbidden to do. And promptly, Adam and Eve, they do what was forbidden. But God knew the result in advance. Don't forget, he's out of time. And now, after so-called original sin, God is very upset about the humans. He regretted his own doings and he decided to destroy whole mankind by a great flood. At least this is a story how it is told in the Bible. So all the followers of Adam and Eve, which have nothing to do with the so-called original sin, they were killed by the great flood. So the original sin should now be away, out of the humans, out of our planet. But no, that's not the case, at least according to the Bible. Thousands of years later, God sends his own Son, Jesus Christ. What was the reason for Jesus Christ to come to earth? He should save mankind from the original sin. But my God, they were killed already by the great flood. Now Jesus is here on the planet, and according to the Gospels, he was a wonderful, fine personality. He taught, he preached peace. But the humans at that time did not understand his message. They tortured Jesus. They crucified him. They killed him. So Jesus had to die in a horrible way. And what for? Jesus had to save us from the original sin. But all the people were dead already, were died already by the great flood. So in reality, all this is a misunderstanding. It's hardly to believe. But we Christians have to believe it. By the way, I said in the beginning that God would need no vehicle in which to move around from point A to point B. But if we follow the Old Testament, in so many cases, God uses a vehicle. He descends, for example, on the holy mountain near with Moses, and he descends with smoke, fire, trembling, loud noise. The whole mountain was like a fire. Or later in the Bible, when you look at the prophet Ezekiel, there God is descending in a fiery chariot. The prophet Ezekiel describes not only the chariot, he describes even details like the wheels, like the wings. He describes the feet. He describes the leg of the vehicle which he sees. And Ezekiel is not only describing what he sees, he also describes the noise when the vehicle descends. So God, at least God in the Old Testament, he used a vehicle. Now, Jesus was here. He was killed. Lord seems to be satisfied. But Jesus, of course, had a mother, the Holy Mary. And according to the Roman Catholic belief, the Mary, the mother of Jesus, is so to say the female boss of the universe. She's the head of the female believers. So Mother Mary was taken up with her body into the heaven, at least according to Roman Catholic beliefs. So far, so good, it seems. But around 610 after Christ, there was a young man living near Mecca in today's Saudi Arabia. His name was Muhammad. And he had some sort of visions. According to himself, it was not visions, it was real. There was an archangel coming down, the archangel of Gabriel. And Gabriel told the young Muhammad that the old religion of Christianity is wrong. Gabriel had come down to preach a new religion, which is the Islamic religion. And even in the Quran, they say that God has no son. And of course, Mother Mary is nothing holy. It's just a human female. So what is now true? The Archangel Gabriel said to Muhammad that the old religion was wrong and he has come to earth to renew, to bring a new religion. And Muhammad would be the prophet of the new religion. That would mean that God made a mistake. But the real, omnipotent, almighty God is out of time. He should know in advance what happened. He should knew that the Christian religion was wrong and now the new religion, the Islamic religion, would be the only one. So was God making a mistake? But all this is just a little part of the disorder which was created among the humans. About 1,600 years later, there was a young man in the United States. His name was Joseph Smith. And on September 21st, 1823, he again had another vision. According to Joseph Smith, it was, like in the case with Muhammad, it was not a vision. He really saw an apparition, an angel with the name of Moroni. And this angel told the young Joseph Smith that in a hill near of the small place of Palmyra in the United States, there were some metallic tablets. Joseph Smith went to the hill, he found the cave, and he found these tablets. 11 other personalities witnessed what Joseph Smith saw. These tablets did really exist. These 11 witnesses, they touched it, they saw it. Now, on this tablet were unknown writings. The angel Moroni told to the human Joseph Smith, if he put 2 little stones on his chest, the stones had the name Urim and Turim, then he could translate the tablets. And Joseph Smith did so. and the outcome was the Book of Mormon. The Book of Mormon is what they believe like the Bible for the Christian community. And this angel Moroni told Joseph Smith that the old religion has developed in a wrong way, that it has become unbelievable and the new religion was necessary, a new Christianity, and that Jesus Christ would visit the United States. Funny. First, in the Old Testament, we had the one God, as the Jewish community says, Yahweh. Then we have the Christian God, which is the son of the big God. Then we have the archangel Gabriel telling to Muhammad that all this is wrong and that God has no son. Thousands of years later, we have another angel, Moroni, telling Joseph Smith that everything of the past was wrong and developed in a wrong way. Now, what should we poor humans believe? To which religion do we have to believe? All this is controversial. It makes no logical sense. And there we have to look for new possible answers. Again, for the Roman Catholic Church, it is a dogma. That means the Catholics have to believe it, that the Holy Mary ascended to the heaven with her body. So the Holy Virgin Mary is, so to say, the female boss of the universe. According to other religions, for example, to the Holy Quran, God has no son and there is no Holy Virgin Mary. So what should we believe? Now, what makes things very, very complicated is that this Holy Mary, existing or non-existing, has shown herself hundreds of times in the past to children, so-called apparitions. For example, in France, there is a little place called Lourdes, and there the Holy Mary was seen in an apparition. The same thing happened in another little place in Portugal. The name is Fatima. And the apparitions of Fatima were really absolutely sensational. And that's why we have to speak about it. It was on May 13th, 1917, when 3 children had an apparition in Fatima. They saw the Holy Mary over a large oak tree. Now, it was obviously a telepathic message because nobody around could understand what was going on. Only the 3 children heard some voices. And this apparition, the Holy Mary, gave some secrets to one of the children. These secrets are called the secrets of Fatima. The oldest of the 3 children, her name was Lucia Santos. She handed down these secrets in her school scribbling, and the Holy Mary gave the order that this secret of Fatima should only be published in the year 1960. So, don't forget, the apparitions took place in 1917, but the order was to publish the secret many years later in 1960. Now, the important thing of these apparitions in Fatima was that the Holy Mary promised the 3 children that at every month, at the same time and the same location, she would show up again. So it all started on May 13th, that means on June 13th, on July 13th, on August 13th, always the same thing appeared. And of course, each month more people were accompanying the 3 children. And exactly on the date, on the hour, on the minute, this apparition took place, but only for the 3 children. The rest of the crowd saw nothing. They just realized that the children fell down to their knees and they were speaking to somebody. And on August 13, she promised to return on September and on October, always at the same time. Now, on October 13, 1970, 80,000 people, absolutely incredible, 80,000 people were accompanying the three children. And on the second, on the spot, the three children start to speak to somebody. But the big crowd saw nothing. At that day, it was rainy. You see 80,000 people close together with their umbrellas. And of a sudden, the heavens opened. And the 80,000 people saw something like a disc. The disc was revolving, turning around itself and coming closer and closer to the 80,000 persons on the ground. And during this show, the whole region was covered in different colors, blue, red, orange, sky, any color, doesn't matter what. It took place for full 4 minutes. And after the 4 minutes, the disc returned, turning, revolving the other way around, and disappeared again in the cloud. So 80,000 people were eyewitness of what the church called later the miracle of the sun. And among these 80,000 witnesses, there were quite some good personalities. For example, the Bishop of Leira was there. Leira is this place in Portugal, which the little village Fatima is part to it. And the bishop said, I clearly saw an object shining, brightening. It was looking like a bull. And the priest next to me saw the same thing. There were other eyewitnesses. There were a professor in theology, a Dr. Bartas, and he said, seen from the front, I saw it like a gigantic disc turning in different color, but seeing from the side, it looked rather like an obelisk, like something long. Now I ask myself, does the really Almighty God need some sort of technical help? What were they seeing? 80,000 witnesses. And the figure which showed to the children always told themselves that she was the Holy Mary. But as we just understood, in other religions, they do not believe in the Holy Mary. What can we do now? I have a suggestion to make. The brain of a children is, so to say, clean. Children's brain have no big problems, no problems of money, no problems of love. They are not lying, big complicated things. Their brain is infantile. And it would be easy for an extraterrestrial crew to give a telepathic message into the brain of children saying that they are the Holy Mary. So because they didn't want to shock the children, they knew the believing of the children. They knew exactly they were Roman Catholics. So they told them, don't be afraid, we do you nothing. I am the Holy Mary. So the children also believed that it was the Holy Mary. But in reality, it was a telepathic message from someone else. Now the situation becomes complicated. Please remember, in 1917, the order was given to publish The Secret in 1960. The writings of the child Jacinta Santos went to the next priest. From the priest to the next bishop was the Bishop of Leira. And from there, and that was all in 1917, the secret was handed down at the Vatican, at the so-called Holy Officium. It should be opened in 1960. And everyone from the press, it was even published in Catholic newspapers, everyone knew that in 1960 the secret should be opened for mankind. So on October 13, 1960, the secret of Fatima was opened in the Vatican. There were an assembly of priests, cardinals, bishops. Of course, it was a secret assembly. But the journalists knew that at that time and at that hour, the secret of Fatima would be revealed. So they waited outside the door. After 2 hours, the door opened and the journalists reported all the bishops and the cardinals and the priests were pale. They were afraid. Nobody gave an answer. The journalist asked them, "What's the secret of Fatima?" But there was no answer. Only the Pope, at that time it was John the 23rd, only the Pope had to say something. And he said, "We cannot publish the secret of Fatima. It would create a storm. It is against our belief to publish this." Now I have some serious questions to the Roman Catholic Church. And just to understand this, I myself, I am educated as a Roman Catholic. I spent 6 years in a boarding school led by Jesuits, so I know what I'm talking about. The problem is, on 1917, the big female boss of the Roman Catholic Church gives order to publish a message in the year 1960. The Pope and the Bishop read the message and then decide not to publish it. How is this possible? I mean, the Holy Virgin Mary, she is really the head of the universe. Now, she gives an order in 1917, and in 1960, they don't follow the order. Something absolutely impossible. What is the reason? Why did the Catholic Church not obey her boss? Pope John the 23rd, on October 13th, 1960, even said to the journalists he cannot publish the secret of Fatima because it would create a panic. What panic? I mean, Mother Mary would know what she does. And she has given order in 1917 to publish the secret in 1960. And now the Pope said it would create a panic. At that time, by the way, around the 60s, there was still the Cold War between the ex-Soviet Union and the Western world, the United States. And everybody was afraid of a possible next World War, the Third World War. There was big discussions in public. There were about Pershing 20 rockets and SS-20 and so all these kind of things. And on September 30th, 1984, the Bishop of Leira is in Portugal, the Bishop of Leira said to the journalists, "The secret of Fatima has nothing to do with the destruction of the world, nothing with Pershing rockets or with SS-20, nothing with peace or big war on earth. It all has to do with our faith. We cannot publish it. It would create a panic." This is all a little ill. I mean, Mother Mary knows what she does, but the priests and the Catholic Church do not obey. So I have the following suggestion to make. I could imagine that an extraterrestrial group was giving a telepathic message to these 3 children in 1917. And the message could be more or less something like this: "We exist, we are here, don't be afraid of us, we will not harm you, we will not destroy you, we are, so to say, your brothers." And in 1917, this extraterrestrial power hoped that in 1960, our governments and our social media would be ready to publish such a message worldwide. But then the Pope and the priests in the Vatican read the message, and they understood it was not the holy marriage. So now I understand that they said, we cannot publish the secret. It would create a panic. It concerns our fate. Otherwise, it would make no sense. And do not forget, in the meantime, since 1917 until 1960, the small village of Fatima has come to a big pilgrim place. There is a wonderful big cathedral in Fatima. Every year, practically 1 million people are visiting Fatima, making a pilgrim to the Holy Mother Mary. And now they realize it was not the Holy Mother Mary. So understand, they cannot publish the message. It would really create a panic. So the secret of Fatima was not published. But the extraterrestrial force still exists. And in a way or the other, they become angry. They decided to do themselves what we missed to do. It was on March 24, 1967. And it was in the state of Montana, the United States. And there are missile silos. The name is called Malmstorm in the state of Montana. In this morning of March 24th, 1967, a young lieutenant, his name was Robert Salas. He was in charge of the missiles. There were 10 missiles in the ground. Each missile was about 1 mile away from the next missile. This for the case of accident. And each missile was completely independent from electricity. They were not linked together. And on this morning, young Lieutenant Robert Salas received a telephone call that there was a strange orange shining object over this base. He tried to inform the boss, and while he was doing so, he watched all the monitors and he see all the green lights for the 10 missiles changed into red. That would mean in practice they could not start one simple missile. What happened? An extraterrestrial force was able to shut down 10 missiles, each one 1 mile away from the other, and each one completely independent, seen from electricity from the other one. It was not a miracle. It was created by an extraterrestrial force. Now, in 1967, all this was a big secret, top secret, as we say. In the meantime, Robert Salas publicly, clearly, he says what happened at that time. And everyone who wished to see it, who wished to see the message of Robert Salas, can just go into Wikipedia. Just Salas Robert, and then you see his testimony. During the decades, UFOs have shown up thousands and thousands of times. But obviously, mankind is not ready. There are always contradictions. There are always groups who debunk what the reality was. But then something new happened. It was on December 27th, 1980. Pilots of the Royal Air Force in Brentwaters. Brentwaters is a Royal Air Force place in England. They realized from the air that in a little forest, just close to the airstrip, they saw a strong light. So a crew was sent down to see what's going on in the forest. And the crew realized there was a bright shining little pyramid. The pyramid had just 2.7 meters in length and 2 meters high, but absolutely bright shining. They saw this pyramid, they could even touch it. And then after a few minutes, the pyramid disappeared. The same case was of course secret for eternity. In the meantime, it's open to the public. Ancient Aliens, this series of the Discovery Channel, showed this case and made it public. And even if you go to Wikipedia, it's very easy. Give in Brentwaters, England, and then you can see all the pictures. No secret anymore. Something is going on, and we still do not speak about it, at least not in large public. Why not? Someone is observing us since thousands of years into the present, and this story goes on. In 1997, Mr. Fife Symington was governor of the US state Arizona, and on March 13th, 1997, a big UFO showed up over Phoenix, Arizona. At that time, Fife Symington was governor, and before he has become governor of Arizona, he was a jet fighting pilot. So he knew what's going up in the air, and he absolutely was not in favor of any cases of UFOs. That evening, many phones ringed, and he was finally forced to go out to a park in Phoenix, Arizona. And there, with hundreds of other people, they saw some strange lights in the air, and these lights formed to a gigantic triangle. Governor Fife Symington immediately realized that whatever was up there was not from our planet. This was a force out of our forces, out of our knowledge. But he was not ready to confess this at that time. The next morning, he gave a press conference and he declared to the press that all these lights in the sky were a misunderstanding. It was just the American Air Force who had shown some lights up in the sky. But that was a lie. And later, Mr. Fife Symington, in the meantime not anymore governor of the state of Arizona, he confessed in public that he was lying. There was something strange in the air, seen by hundreds and photographed by hundreds. And by the way, I just made a mistake before. Just going to Google if you want to see all these things. Google, give in Symington, Fife, or Arizona lights, and you see what happened. What do we do with all these cases? I am living in Switzerland, and here in Switzerland, none of these cases are published. Not even in Germany. We always want to be reasonable, and something which is not something which we cannot explain in the sky, we call unreasonable. So we are afraid to ridicule ourselves. We don't have the courage to go to public. And we should do this because the other side, what I call the extraterrestrial force, slowly, they will show them more and more. They still try not to shock us, but they wish that we understand that they do exist and that we have a possibility to get in communication with them. Now I myself, I receive many letters with secret messages, and from time to time people send me also UFO cases. And just a few months ago I received a letter with a UFO case, and it was taken in Puerto Rico on April 26, 2013. The UFO case took place near the Rafael Hernandez Airport by Aguadilla. Aguadilla is a city in Puerto Rico. Now I can show you this case that is somehow and some way shocking, because the pictures were made out of a cockpit of a fighter jet. You see all the dates inside the pictures, and in the center you see a UFO flying with high speed over some houses, And then over an airport, and directly behind the airport there was the sea. And you see that the flying object is jumping into the water. After a few seconds it turns out of the water again, but this time it has separated into two different flying saucers. In the beginning it was only one, and now we have two separate flying saucers. Now this UFO case is absolutely real and can be proven not only by the picture. It's not an illusion, it's not some laser beams or strange lights, because when the object jumps into the water, you see the water fountains splashed up. It's reality. And what are we doing? Nothing. It's time that the so-called skeptics finally simply shut up. Look at all these cases. Discuss, for example, the Fatima case. Why does the church not publish the secret of Fatima in 1960, while the Holy Mother Virgin gives the order in 1970 to do so? All this is crazy in a way, and we have to have the impression we are misleaded. Someone is lying to our society. There is an extraterrestrial force, whatever it might be, where they came from, be it from outer space, be it from another dimension, be it from other time, we don't know. But something is here. This is a reality, and we should start to cope with them. That's their desire too. So what is going on here? In my profession, I work with thousands and 10,000s of years. I know that we were observed some thousands of years ago. I know we are still observed today. And who are these aliens, or that third force, whatever we call them? Of course, as long as we don't have a direct contact, nobody knows for sure what they are. We simply can state they exist. Now, in my profession, I know that extraterrestrials visited our planet thousands of years ago. At that time, our ancestors were Stone Age people. They could not understand what was going on. So our Stone Age people believed that these extraterrestrials were some kind of gods. We all know that there is only one God. Some gods, in plural, they do not exist. But they were here in antiquity, and they are here again. And in antiquity, they more or less looked human. How is this possible? I mean, an extraterrestrial crew or extraterrestrial beings definitely would have another evolution than we. So, must they not look completely different to us? And every child knows that the distances between the stars are extremely high. We are talking of light years. So how is it possible that somebody reached these light years? All this seems to be controversial, but there are logical answers to all these questions. Can we ever reach the stars? Well, according to science fiction, of course. Even according to modern science, of course. And there is a primitive way to reach the stars, even with the primitive technology. Everyone knows the American space shuttle. Now, with every launch, you bring up about 30 tons of heavy load into an orbit. It's simply a question of money. It's always the same thing. Do we have 4 space shuttles, or do we have 40 space shuttles? If we would have the money and we would have 40 space shuttles, then we would take off practically every day, not every month. That means every day heavy load of 30 tons into an orbit between the Earth and the Moon. These particles are linked together in the orbit. Out comes a gigantic ring. It has to be a ring, because this ring will turn around its own axis. and by this you create a centrifugal force. You are not again weightless in the space. Now you have to start slowly and slowly. Just use an engine which is capable for about 2% of the speed of light. 2%, that's not much. With 2% of the speed of light, in about 100 years from now, we would reach the distance of 10 light years within 500 human years. But 500 human years, nobody can survive this. It's not necessary. You just look at this gigantic spaceship as a sort of mother spaceship or generation spaceship. In this generation spaceship, many generations die and create life again and die. Imagine such a generation spaceship like a gigantic ocean liner. There are TV stations there are different restaurants there are sport events there, etc. So maybe generation number 29 only reaches the goal, 10 light years away from us. During these 10 light years, of course, the astronomical crew on board will look for planets similar to the Earth, not too hot, not too cold, not too big, etc. According to the newest dates, which are calculated from the Kepler telescope, in our Milky Way, we have about 5 billions of Earth-like planets out there. 5 billions, imagine. This is a calculation, a statistical calculation. So the crew would find out where is the next Earth-like planet. Now the gigantic generation spaceship is not able to make a landing because they would break down. So it stays in orbit. And now the crew goes down to the nearly discovered new planet. From orbit, the crew up there tells them, hey, down there you find oil, you find minerals, you find raw material, etc. Now we give them maybe 400 years to build up a new industrial society. We have our industrial society created within about 180 years. So we give them 400 years. And then 100 years more, altogether 500 years, to construct a new generation spaceship. That means now we have the old generation spaceship and the new after 500 years. Now 2 spaceships starts. Each one has again the distance of 10 light years. And the story repeats. Then we have 4 generation spaceships and 8 and 12 and so on. With a speed of only 2% of the speed of light, we could colonize our own Milky Way within 10 millions of years from one starting point, from our planet. So it is possible. And this calculation was made with 2% of the speed of light. If in 100 years in the future we reach 10% of the speed of light or 5% of the speed of light, it will not take 10 millions of years. We can have it in a shorter way. So the argument that it is impossible to reach the stars is simply not true. It's just a question of the will. If a society wishes to do it, they will do it. And somebody obviously has done it a long time ago. But the critics, of course, say, even if we accept all these theories, maybe as a sort of speculation, it still makes no sense, because extraterrestrials will look completely different than we humans. Evolution will not go the same way. But this is wrong true. Again, there is a theory which was brought up by the Nobel Prize winner, Svante Arrhenius. He was a Swedish man some 60 years ago. And this theory is called panspermia. If you don't know what panspermia is, just go into Google. Panspermia. It's sensational. What is panspermia? The idea starts somewhere in the universe. The first intelligent being of life has come to light. Now stop. How did it start then? We have no idea. and we cannot answer the question. It's like in the beginning of my speech. We don't know what created the Big Bang, and we don't know what created God. The same thing here. Give me a piece of paper, and I make a perfect circle on the piece of paper, and then I return this piece of paper to you. Tell me, what did the circle start? By your logic, you would say, well, Mr. von Däniken must have started somehow. Of course, but you cannot answer the question, because the circle by itself is closed completely. So we cannot answer the question, where did it start? At some point it did start. So the first intelligent being came to life. And they had an interest to spread out their own form of life in a certain section of their Milky Way. Now in the beginning, you don't start with gigantic spaceships. That's all too complicated. All what you do, you spread out your genetic information. In our body, it's all composited with the so-called DNA. And in every cell, we have this DNA. In the DNA, we have the information not only of our own body, but of the bodies of all of our ancestors. Now, they take billions and billions of DNA. They put it into little capsules. They shot these capsules away from their own solar system. But these capsules are constructed in a way that after some time they break up. Now trillions of DNA exist in the universe in a certain section of a Milky Way. Of course, the one who start with this game, they know exactly that the biggest part of these forms of life or life information will be destructed. They come into a sun, or they are disintegrated in a way or another. But a little part of it will make a landing on a planet similar to them who started with it. And this will be the starting point of evolution. We have our evolution on our planet. And I was educated in a boarding school where they told me that this whole evolution started in the beginning, that a few atoms are collected together, they form complicated forms of molecules, then proteins, etc. In the meantime, we know that this is not the case. The information of life has come from outside. But are we not part of evolution? Of course we are part of evolution. Just the starting point comes from outside. The rest is evolution until our brain, until our existence. The funny thing is that this way of thinking exists even in old holy books. For example, in the Tibetan books, Tanshur and Kanshur, they say that we are the creation from another creation. Or in the Bible, for example, it says that God, or you can translate the gods, God created man according their own image. So we are the offsprings of another solar system. And it makes sense now that extraterrestrials look similar to us. With this, you do not exclude complete other evolutions. Maybe there are planets with something like flying elephants, or with intelligent trees or bushes. But this again does not exclude a similar form of life as we are, because we are the offsprings of another solar system. The gods created humans according their own image. We are part of it. How can you prove a thing like this? You can prove it only in your DNA, and you can prove it at least by indications in the old holy writings. There is on this planet a book called the Book of Enoch. Enoch was a prophet before the Great Flood. He was the seventh patriarch. In the Bible, practically nothing is handed down about Enoch, but there is a Book of Enoch which comes from the Ethiopian church.